It was a subtle shift, like the room had taken a deep breath and was now holding it. The soft hum of the refrigerator faded, and the small clock on the wall stopped ticking altogether. She blinked, confused, and looked around. The lights didn't flicker, but the glow. Evelyn lived alone in a small, quiet house at the end of a winding dirt road. The house was old, with wooden floors that creaked when the wind blew, and a kitchen that still smelled of cinnamon and coffee from years long gone. She was 82 years old, a widow for nearly a decade, and her days were filled with memories rather than people. Her husband, Thomas, had passed away on a rainy Thursday, and since then, the house had grown quieter with each passing year. The ticking of the kitchen clock became the only voice she heard most days. Each evening she would sit in her worn armchair by the window with her Bible on her lap. She didn't read much anymore, but she would run her fingers over the thin pages, whispering small prayers. They were simple, really. She never asked for riches or miracles, just peace, just a sign that she wasn't as alone as she felt. The night it happened, the world outside was calm. The wind had stopped, and even the crickets had gone silent. Evelyn was in the kitchen, standing slowly to make her evening tea. She moved with care, her joints aching more than usual. She turned the kettle on and reached for a jar of chamomile when something unusual made her pause. The air had changed. Hay gave off felt different, warmer, softer. That's when she felt it. Not a sound, not a movement, but a presence. She turned slowly, her hand gripping the edge of the counter for balance, and there, by the kitchen doorway, stood a figure. Tall, still, glowing. She didn't scream. She didn't run. Something deep inside her, something old and quiet, told her this was not a threat. The figure didn't move. He simply stood there, bathed in a golden light that shimmered like morning sun through stained glass. His face was calm, and though no words were spoken, Evelyn felt something pressing gently against her heart. Peace, safety, love. She opened her mouth to speak, but found she couldn't, not from fear, but from awe. Her body, which had been aching moments ago, now felt strangely light. The air carried a scent she hadn't smelled in years, lilacs. Thomas had planted them outside the window long ago, and then, just as suddenly as he had appeared, the figure vanished. Evelyn stood there, hands trembling, heart pounding gently but steadily. The clock ticked again. The kettle whistled. But the world had changed. She knew it. Something had visited her. And deep in her soul, she finally believed. Her prayers had been heard. Evelyn spent the rest of that night sitting quietly at her kitchen table, the warm cup of chamomile forgotten before her. Her hands trembled slightly, still feeling the echo of the angel's presence. She thought about the figure's glowing light, the calm strength it carried, and the peace that filled the room. It was unlike anything she had ever experienced. The ache in her joints seemed to ease, and for the first time in many years, Evelyn felt a spark of hope kindle deep inside her heart. Morning came slowly, the sunlight filtering gently through the lace curtains. Evelyn woke feeling lighter, as though a weight she had carried for decades was beginning to lift. Her body moved with more ease, and when she looked in the mirror, she saw not just the reflection of an old woman, but a soul renewed by something extraordinary. She touched the small feather she found on the kitchen floor that morning, a delicate white plume that hadn't been there the night before. She held it carefully, marveling at its softness and the strange warmth it radiated. That day, Evelyn found herself reaching for her Bible, opening it with hands that felt steadier than usual. She read a verse that spoke of courage and the promise of God's everlasting presence. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered a prayer of gratitude. Though she was still alone, Evelyn no longer felt lonely. Over the following days, she noticed small changes in her life. She walked with less pain, her steps more confident. Neighbors greeted her with smiles, and she found herself smiling back, feeling connected to a world she had long kept at a distance. Evelyn began to prepare meals again, filling her kitchen with the scents of cinnamon and baking bread. She started writing letters to her grandchildren, telling them stories of her youth and sharing words of love and encouragement. Each letter was a bridge to the family she cherished, but rarely saw. One evening, as Evelyn sat by her window watching the stars, a soft knock came at the door. Her heart leapt, but when she opened it, there was no one there, only a small envelope resting on the doorstep. Inside was a note that read, "You are never alone." Evelyn smiled through tears, feeling the presence of something greater watching over her. That night, she went to bed with a sense of peace that had eluded her for years. She knew her life was changing, guided by an unseen hand and a promise she could no longer deny. Evelyn woke that morning with a strange but comforting sense of calm. The sun streamed softly through the curtains, casting warm patterns on the worn wooden floor. She rose slowly, feeling strength in her legs she hadn't felt in years. As she moved through her small house, every creak of the floorboards and every familiar scent seemed more vivid, more alive. The kitchen, once quiet and still, now felt like a place of possibility. The feather she had found the day before rested on the windowsill, catching the light like a tiny beacon. She ran her fingers over it thoughtfully, feeling the soft texture and the strange warmth it seemed to hold. Evelyn didn't understand everything that had happened, but she knew one thing for certain. Her life was no longer the same. She sat down at the kitchen table, opening her Bible to a page she remembered from childhood. The words seemed to speak directly to her soul, reminding her that faith was not about seeing, but believing. Her thoughts wandered to the angel's visit, the glowing figure, the peaceful presence, the silence that had filled the room. She realized that this moment, this experience, was a gift she had been waiting for all her life. Over the next few days, Evelyn began to notice small signs of change. Her pain was less sharp, and her steps grew steadier. She found joy in simple things, a blooming flower outside her window, the sound of birdsong in the morning, the comforting weight of her Bible in her hands. She started writing letters to old friends and family members she hadn't spoken to in years. Each letter was a thread, weaving her back into the fabric of the world she had slowly drifted from. One afternoon she received a phone call from her granddaughter Sarah, who she hadn't heard from in months. Their conversation was warm and filled with laughter, a light in the darkness that had shadowed Evelyn's heart. They promised to visit soon, and Evelyn felt a swell of hope. That evening, as she prepared her simple dinner, Evelyn thought about the angel's silent message. It was a reminder that even in the loneliest moments, she was watched over, loved, and never truly alone. She felt a deep gratitude welling up inside her, a faith renewed, a spirit lifted. As night fell, Evelyn sat by the window, the city lights twinkling in the distance. The room was quiet but filled with a gentle peace. She whispered a prayer of thanks, feeling the warmth of the feather in her pocket and the unseen presence that had changed her life forever. Evelyn knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with a heart full of faith and a soul touched by grace. Evelyn's days began to fill with small moments of joy she had long forgotten. The loneliness that once wrapped around her like a heavy cloak started to lift, replaced by a quiet sense of purpose. Each morning she rose with a renewed spirit, eager to embrace whatever the day might bring. She spent time in her garden, tending to the flowers Thomas had planted years before. The roses were blooming, their sweet fragrance filling the air, reminding her of love that never fades. One afternoon, Evelyn was surprised when her neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, stopped by for a visit. The two women sat on the porch, sharing stories and laughter as the sun dipped low in the sky. Evelyn felt a warmth in her chest that had little to do with the afternoon sun. It was the healing power of human connection. Despite her newfound peace, Evelyn's favorite moments were still those quiet nights in her kitchen. She would sit at the table, the feather carefully placed beside her Bible, and reflect on the angel's visit. She often wondered about the figure's true nature, the reasons behind the silent message it had brought. Sometimes, when the house was still, she thought she could feel that same presence watching over her, a gentle comfort that eased her worries and fears. One evening, as Evelyn prepared her dinner, she noticed something strange. The clock in the kitchen, which had stopped on the night of the angel's visit, suddenly ticked again. The familiar sound filled the room, marking time's steady passage. It felt like a sign, a reminder that life, no matter how hard, goes on, and healing is possible. As the weeks passed, Evelyn's health continued to improve. She found herself walking farther, her steps more confident. The pain that had once held her captive began to fade into the background. With this new strength, she started attending church regularly, reconnecting with a community she had avoided for years. The sermons and hymns stirred something deep inside her, awakening a faith that was vibrant and alive. At church, Evelyn met others who had faced their own hardships and found hope. Their stories inspired her, and she began to share her own experience quietly with a few close friends. She told them about the angel, the feather, and the peace that had transformed her life. Though some were skeptical, most listened with open hearts, touched by the sincerity of her words. One Sunday afternoon, after service, Evelyn was invited to join a group of women who volunteered at the local shelter. She accepted eagerly, grateful for the chance to give back. Helping others brought her joy and a sense of belonging that she had never known before. The angel's visit had not only healed her body and soul, but had opened a door to a new chapter filled with love, service, and community. Evelyn now saw her life as a gift, a precious chance to share faith and hope with those around her. As she settled into her chair each night, feather and Bible nearby, she whispered a prayer of thanks. The room was no longer silent. It was alive with faith and filled with the light of grace. Evelyn's transformation continued to ripple through her daily life, bringing unexpected blessings and a renewed sense of purpose. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves fluttered outside her window, she found herself preparing to visit the local nursing home. It was a place she had avoided for years, haunted by memories of loss and loneliness. But now, with a heart full of courage, Evelyn stepped inside with a gentle smile and open arms. The residents greeted her warmly, their faces lighting up at the sight of someone who genuinely cared. She spent hours listening to their stories, tales of love, regret, and hope that resonated deeply with her own journey. Evelyn's presence was a balm to many, a reminder that even in the twilight years, life could still be meaningful and filled with grace. She shared her own story cautiously, speaking of the night an angel appeared in her kitchen. Though some were skeptical, many found comfort in her words, and a few even shared their own encounters with the divine. Evelyn became a quiet beacon of faith in the community, inspiring others to look beyond their struggles and find peace in small miracles. Her letters to her grandchildren became more frequent and filled with warmth. She wrote of the angel, the feather, and the hope that had blossomed within her. These letters bridged the distance between generations, knitting her family closer, even when miles apart. One particular letter brought a surprise, a reply from Sarah, her granddaughter, who expressed a desire to visit and spend time together. The anticipation of their reunion filled Evelyn with joy she hadn't felt in years. As winter approached, Evelyn found herself reflecting on the changes in her life. The once quiet kitchen now seemed alive with memories and promise. She continued to keep the feather close, a symbol of the night that had shifted her world. Though she never saw the angel again, she knew its presence remained in her heart, guiding her steps and comforting her soul. Her faith, once fragile and uncertain, had grown strong like the roots of an ancient tree. It weathered storms and blossomed in sunlight. Evelyn knew that life was a precious gift, and she was determined to make the most of the days she had left. One snowy evening, as she sat by the fireplace wrapped in a soft blanket, Evelyn opened her Bible and read aloud verses that spoke of hope and endurance. She felt connected not only to God, but to the countless souls who had found solace in these words throughout history. Her prayer that night was simple but profound: gratitude for the angel, for the love that never leaves, and for the chance to live fully. The transformation was not just in her body, but in her spirit. Evelyn had rediscovered faith, hope, and a deep sense of peace. She had become a living testament to the power of grace and the unseen forces that watch over us all. And every night, as the house grew quiet, she would glance at the kitchen, where the angel once stood, and smile, knowing she was never truly alone. Evelyn's renewed spirit continued to inspire everyone around her. She found herself drawn more and more into the rhythm of the community, becoming a cherished presence among neighbors and friends. Her days were filled with simple joys: gardening, attending church, and sharing meals with those who welcomed her warmth. One afternoon, while helping at the local food pantry, Evelyn met a young woman named Clara. Clara was struggling with her own hardships, recently widowed and feeling overwhelmed by grief. Evelyn listened patiently as Clara shared her story, offering words of comfort and hope. She told Clara about the angel who had visited her kitchen, the peace it had brought, and how faith could be a guiding light in the darkest times. Clara's eyes filled with tears, and a bond formed between the two women, a bridge of understanding and shared strength. Evelyn realized that the angel's visit was not only for her, but meant to be shared, a gift to help others find courage and faith. As the seasons changed, Evelyn's health remained steady and her spirit grew stronger. She began to write down her experiences, hoping to leave a record of her journey for future generations. Her words flowed with honesty and humility, capturing the beauty of small miracles and the power of faith. One evening, as she sat by the fire with her notebook, Evelyn felt a quiet presence in the room. She looked up to see a faint glow near the window, soft and comforting. Though the angel never returned fully, these gentle signs reminded her that she was watched over and loved. Evelyn's family started visiting more often, drawn by the changes they saw in her and the stories she shared. Her grandchildren listened with wide eyes and open hearts as she spoke of hope and grace. She encouraged them to believe in the unseen and to hold fast to their faith, no matter the challenges life might bring. Through these moments, Evelyn felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Her life, once marked by loss and solitude, had blossomed into a testament of resilience and love. She was no longer just an old woman living alone. She was a living witness to the miracles that happen when faith is embraced fully. One night, as she prepared for bed, Evelyn paused by the kitchen window looking out at the stars. She whispered a prayer of thanks, feeling the warmth of the feather in her pocket and the peace that filled her heart. The angel had changed her life forever, and though unseen, its presence was a constant source of strength. Evelyn knew that the journey of faith was ongoing, a path walked with hope and courage, and with each new day she stepped forward, carrying the light of that unforgettable night in her heart. Evelyn's story began to spread throughout the small town, whispered from neighbor to neighbor, shared in hushed conversations during church gatherings, and told over cups of tea at community events. People were drawn to her quiet strength and the peaceful glow she seemed to carry wherever she went. Her transformation was a living testament to faith's power to heal and renew. One crisp morning, Evelyn received a letter from the local newspaper. They wanted to interview her about the mysterious experience she had shared so openly. At first she hesitated. She was a private woman after all, but something inside urged her to say yes. The interview was scheduled for the following week, and Evelyn spent days preparing her thoughts and prayers. When the day arrived, she met with the reporter in the church hall, surrounded by familiar faces and supportive smiles. Evelyn spoke softly but clearly, recounting the night the angel appeared in her kitchen. She described the glowing figure, the overwhelming peace, and the profound changes that followed. The story was published, and soon strangers from nearby towns began reaching out, seeking comfort and hope through her words. Letters arrived, filled with gratitude, questions, and their own stories of faith and struggle. Evelyn responded to each with kindness, grateful that her experience could touch so many lives. Her home became a small sanctuary for those seeking solace, a place where faith was nurtured and shared freely. Through these connections, Evelyn found renewed purpose. She started hosting weekly gatherings in her living room, inviting neighbors to join her in prayer and fellowship. These meetings blossomed into a supportive community where stories were shared, burdens lightened, and hope rekindled. Evelyn's health continued to improve, and with newfound energy, she began volunteering at the local library, helping others discover the joy of reading and learning. Her favorite section was, of course, the spiritual and inspirational books. One afternoon, while organizing shelves, Evelyn came across a worn journal left by a previous visitor. Inside were handwritten notes about faith, miracles, and the quiet presence of angels in everyday life. She smiled, feeling a deep connection with the anonymous author and the shared journey of belief. As winter gave way to spring, Evelyn's story reached the ears of a local pastor who invited her to speak during a Sunday service. Nervous but determined, she accepted. Standing before the congregation, Evelyn shared her experience one last time, urging everyone to hold on to faith even in the darkest hours. Her words moved many to tears and inspired a renewed sense of hope within the church. That night, as Evelyn lay in bed, she felt the familiar warmth in her heart, the same peace the angel had brought into her life. She whispered a prayer, thanking God for the gift of grace and the power of faith. Evelyn knew that her journey was not just her own, but a story meant to inspire others to believe in the unseen and to trust in the love that surrounds us all. Evelyn woke to the soft chirping of birds outside her window, a gentle reminder of the new day's promise. The world outside was slowly awakening, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold. She took a deep breath, feeling gratitude fill her heart. Life, once heavy with sorrow, now felt like a delicate gift wrapped in hope and faith. That morning, Evelyn prepared to visit the local community centre, where she had recently begun volunteering to help elderly residents with daily tasks and companionship. As she walked down the familiar path, the crisp autumn air filled her lungs, invigorating her spirit. When she arrived, smiles and warm greetings welcomed her. The centre was alive with chatter, laughter, and the comforting buzz of shared stories. Evelyn loved these moments, times when she could connect with others who understood the quiet struggles of growing older. During one visit, Evelyn met a man named Robert. He was a retired teacher, kind and thoughtful, but burdened by loneliness and illness. As they talked, Evelyn shared her story about the angel's visit, the feather, and the peace that had transformed her life. Robert listened intently, his eyes reflecting a mix of skepticism and hope. Over the weeks that followed, Evelyn and Robert grew close, supporting each other through difficult days and celebrating small victories. Their friendship blossomed into a source of mutual strength and encouragement. Evelyn found joy in these connections, realizing that her journey was not only about personal healing, but also about bringing light to others who needed it. One afternoon, as Evelyn prepared to leave the center, she noticed a young woman struggling to carry groceries. Without hesitation, Evelyn offered her assistance. The woman, named Grace, was new to town and overwhelmed by the challenges of settling in. Evelyn welcomed her warmly, offering friendship and guidance. Grace soon became a regular visitor, joining Evelyn at community gatherings and church events. Through these friendships, Evelyn felt her life expanding in ways she had never imagined. She continued to write letters to her grandchildren, each one filled with stories of faith, hope, and love. These letters became treasured keepsakes, passed down through generations as reminders of the power of belief. As the seasons changed, Evelyn's story inspired many in her town and beyond. Her experience was shared in newsletters, online forums, and local gatherings, bringing comfort to those facing their own trials. Yet, Evelyn remained humble, always quick to remind others that the true source of her peace was her faith in God. One quiet evening, Evelyn sat by her kitchen window, the feather resting gently beside her Bible. She reflected on the journey she had traveled, the sorrow, the angel's visit, the healing, and the newfound purpose. Though she had never seen the angel again, she knew its presence was with her always, a silent guardian watching over her steps. She whispered a prayer of thanks, feeling the familiar warmth in her heart. Evelyn's story was far from over, but she faced each day with a renewed spirit, carrying the light of grace wherever she went. Evelyn's life had become a quiet beacon of hope within her small town. Word of her angelic encounter had spread beyond her immediate circle, reaching ears far and wide. Yet despite the growing attention, Evelyn remained grounded in her humble routine. She woke each day with a thankful heart, embracing the simple joys that filled her days. One morning, as she sipped tea in her kitchen, Evelyn received an unexpected visitor. It was Pastor James, a gentleman known for his kindness and wisdom. He had come to check on her, bringing a basket of fresh bread and warm words of encouragement. Their conversation flowed easily, filled with shared faith and mutual respect. Pastor James invited Evelyn to speak at a local faith retreat scheduled for the coming month. Though nervous, she accepted, feeling it was a chance to share the message that had changed her life. In the weeks leading up to the retreat, Evelyn prepared diligently. She practiced speaking aloud, crafting her story with care and prayer. The support of her community buoyed her spirits, reminding her she was never truly alone. The day of the retreat arrived, and Evelyn stood before a room filled with faces eager to hear her story. Her voice was steady as she recounted the night an angel appeared in her kitchen, the warmth of its presence, and the peace that followed. Tears glistened in the eyes of many listeners, moved by her heartfelt testimony. Afterward, several attendees approached her, sharing their own stories of faith and hope. Evelyn felt a deep connection with these kindred spirits, grateful that her experience could touch so many lives. Following the retreat, Evelyn's story continued to inspire others. She was invited to share her journey at various community events, faith groups, and even on local radio programs. Each time her message was the same: faith can bring light to the darkest moments, and angels watch over us in ways we may not always see. Despite the growing attention, Evelyn's focus remained on the simple things: her garden, her Bible, her neighbors, and her family. She cherished the visits from her grandchildren, especially Sarah, who had become more involved in Evelyn's life. Their bond deepened with each shared conversation, bridging generations with love and understanding. One evening, as Evelyn sat by the fireplace, she reflected on the incredible journey she had traveled. The angel's visit had been a turning point, a moment that brought healing, hope, and renewed faith. She felt blessed beyond measure, and knew that her story was a testament to the unseen forces of grace that touch our lives. As the fire crackled softly, Evelyn whispered a prayer of thanks. She trusted that no matter what the future held, she would continue to walk her path with courage, faith, and an open heart, forever guided by the light of that unforgettable night. Evelyn sat quietly in her favorite chair by the window, the soft glow of the evening sun casting warm light across her face. The years had brought many changes: loss, loneliness, healing, and hope. But through it all, her faith had remained a steadfast anchor. She often thought back to that unforgettable night when the angel appeared in her kitchen, a moment that had transformed her life forever. It was not just a vision or a fleeting dream. It was a message, a divine whisper, reminding her that she was never alone, that God's love surrounds us in our darkest hours. As she reflected on her journey, Evelyn felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. She knew that life's trials had tested her spirit, but they had also deepened her faith and strengthened her resolve. The pain she once carried had softened, replaced by a quiet joy rooted in hope and trust. Her heart was full, not with worldly treasures, but with the riches of grace and the comforting presence of God. That night, Evelyn whispered a prayer of gratitude for the blessings she had received, for the strength to face each day, and for the unwavering faith that guided her path. She prayed not only for herself, but for all those who struggle with loneliness, fear, and doubt, asking that they too might feel the gentle touch of divine love. The room around her was still, but Evelyn sensed a sacred presence, a warmth that filled the air and wrapped around her like a tender embrace. It was as if the angel who had visited her years ago was there once more, watching over her with eternal compassion. In her heart, she carried the truth that faith is not about having all the answers, but about trusting in the unseen. It is about believing in a love greater than ourselves, a love that heals, restores, and redeems. Evelyn's story was not one of miracles in the grandest sense, but of the quiet, steady grace that transforms ordinary lives into testimonies of hope. As she prepared to rest for the night, Evelyn placed the small feather, the symbol of her angelic encounter, beside her Bible. She smiled softly, knowing that this simple token represented a promise, that no matter how dark the night, light will always return. With a heart full of faith and eyes gently closing, Evelyn embraced the peace that had become her companion. Her journey was a reminder to all who would listen that through faith, hope, and the love of Jesus, we are never truly alone. And in that truth, there is a comfort deeper than words can express, a peace that surpasses all understanding.